This is FightFans Radio.
What's up, MMA fans? Welcome to episode 42 of the MMA Pulse on FightFansRadio.com. Crazy week again in MMA. No Jared this week. Dude's on strike. I didn't give him enough packs of bubble gum. So instead of Jared, I've got some guy named John who's going to be the replacement co-host. You there, John?
I sure am, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. So I heard a rumor that you were the guy to call when we needed like a replacement host.
Oh no! The word got out, huh?
Yeah, that's the rumor I've been hearing. You know, I've been seeing all these things on the intranet about you, so I had to get a hold of you.
Yeah. I was on my own podcast for a little while, but I switched websites, so I'm not on that anymore. So I guess while I'm getting my feet underneath me on my new site, at 5 ounces of pain, I am, I'm a free agent, so I've been sitting in all over the place. So I'm glad to be here, though, man. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for being here. I don't like doing the show by myself because I get tired of talking pretty quickly. So it's good to have someone else to take some of the workload.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. Anytime.
So, if anybody would like to email the show, let me get this over with. It is mmapulse@mmavalor.com. Today we're going to talk about this damn freaking injury thing. I mean, we just can't seem to get past it. It seems to be every damn card. You know, people are getting injured, and it happened again yesterday, and it happened in bunches. I mean, they say things happened in three, and I mean, we got one guy got knocked out of 152, and then two guys on 153, and I mean, what do you make of all these injuries, man?
This is a weird thing. I mean, it's hard to blame on one thing. I keep on hearing people throwing around words like the injury bug, and you know, these guys are fighters. These guys go into a gym and they train, and they're not, they're going at 70%, 80%, and they're not trying to hurt each other. But these injuries happen. I mean, you got things like Jose Aldo, who was on a motorcycle wreck about 3 weeks ago. Said he was fine. I'm pretty sure someone reported that he got an infection in his foot.
Yeah.
And it became too painful and he had to pull out of the fight. You can argue that fighters do much more dangerous things than ride motorcycles. But at the same time, I think if the UFC really wanted to protect their investments, they should go ahead and put in some sort of lifestyle clauses into their contracts. I mean, what do you think about that?
I mean, everyone else does it. I mean, when I say everyone else, I mean baseball's got it, football's got it. I mean, if your livelihood is getting into the octagon and fighting, and the UFC is marketing you and doing all these things to, putting millions of dollars into promoting a fight, the last thing they want to see is you doing a wheelie on a dirt bike somewhere. I mean,
No.
and then getting hurt and saying, "Oh, I'm okay," and I mean, it should happen. I mean, it's hard to do. I mean, with baseball, they've got the union and they work all these things out. But I mean, it would be much harder for, I think, the UFC to implement something like that. But it's really not that far fetched.
No, it's not far-fetched at all. But I mean, it's also important to remember this isn't the first guy to, I mean, Frank Mir had a nasty motorcycle accident.
Right.
And then, I mean, it almost, killed him. He said he was inches away from cracking his head on a curb, So, I mean, that could have been, disastrous, just for, just for him, let alone the company as well. And there was someone last week I saw who laid down a bike, and they had, their back was all messed up. I forgot who it was. It's totally bad news on my part, but he, but he was already back in the gym training, but he had some crazy road rash on his back. So there's certainly something to be argued with it, but there's also the point is, oh, right, it was, excuse me, I just thought someone reminded me it was Kyle Kingsbury who laid down his bike, and it's a it's one of those things where where do you draw the line? We've got some guys doing these Spartan races, Jim Miller, those obstacle courses. And those things aren't exactly powder puff stuff. They're races.
Right.
Nick Diaz does triathlons. I mean, obviously safer than a motorcycle or an obstacle course, but you can get pretty hurt doing something like that as well, be him on this suspension or not.
Yeah. Now, I mean, another thing that I've heard, and I think there's some underlying truth to it, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not really what's causing the injuries. Is I hear people saying that this contract, that they've got, this medical or the injury clause that they've got, our contract and stuff that the UFC implemented, that fighters are pulling out of fights for little scratches and stuff because they know they've got the insurance. And I mean, I saw you tweeting about that, and I think you and me both agree that that's not the reason why all these people are pulling out of fights.
Well, I 100% agree. I mean, the UFC insurance policy is one of the best things to happen in mixed martial arts in a long time. This is something that, for those of us like you and me who have been covering the sport a long time, this was something that was an issue. You'd see these guys get injured and they'd be out of fights, and they didn't, and the UFC wasn't as liberal as they were with their money in 2006 and 2007. They weren't, still paying guys salaries. They did it a few times, but they weren't as liberal as they were doing it now. And this happening is this wonderful thing. And to think Quentin Rampage Jackson, who I'm not sure what his contract set for this fight, but he has made up to upwards of $250K just on listed payment from like the NSAC and whoever's listing their payments. The fighter reported. The fighter contracts, the way that it's been explained to me, is you can get up to $50,000. Now let's do the math here. I think Quentin would rather have the $250K than just throw up his hands and walk away from a fight. And so the guys that are going to be doing something like that, which I still think are few and far between, because those are the guys who are still trying to make a name for themselves. They're still trying to build a brand, and they're still trying to win favors with the UFC. The guys, making 8-8 on the undercard, the Facebook fight guys, these are the guys that you might be able to make that argument for, but that's still a hard sell for me.
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think it's more just the fact that training camps never seem to stop anymore. You fight, you maybe rest a couple days, and you're right back into the gym busting your ass. And I mean, that's what these guys are taking the risk doing, and it happens, and it goes in waves. And it just seems to be like right now, it seems every fight card. It's like Dana White wakes up every morning and he's tweeting, this guy's injured, this guy's injured. I mean, it's just crazy. And I mean, the injury bug, it's the fun thing to say. It's it's catchy, it's cliche and everything, but I mean there is something to it. The fact that like earlier in the year, the fight cards seemed to be intact, and then we kind of got into the summertime, and these last probably 8 cards, it seems they're getting hit, and when they're getting hit, it's not like, oh, this guy on the undercard, he's out and we're bringing someone else in. They're big hits, and that's what is making it stand out more. I mean, we're getting champions hurt, multiple guys on the main card, and it stands out more to the fans and to media, and so that's why we think it happens more often instead of these guys that, if you bring another guy in and the fight still looks the same to everybody.
Yeah, and I mean, in the wake of UFC 151 cancellation, this, this is even more magnified. You know what I mean? This is even
Yeah.
more. It's even more of a hot button issue. I remember, what was the curse card? Was it UFC 108, 109? I was in there somewhere where there
Yeah,
was
it
the
was.
curse card where there was something like 17 different fighter changes. It wasn't 17 injuries, but 17 fighters were in and out of that card. By the time that it actually went down. And it was called the cursed card and all this stuff, and everyone, it was the cool thing to say at the time to report how and everyone laugh at how many of the names got changed and stuff. And I even saw like a whiteboard joke of like this is what the UFC poster was or something like that. But it's this is a rough sport though. And I mean, there's also the argument to say that the roster is much bigger now. They've added more divisions. There's also the thing to say like just as many cards. There's more cards now, and there's still going to be more cards. In a perfect world, I think for the UFC 51, for UFC, there would be 52 fights a week. 52 fight cards a year. So
Right.
it's one of those things that I think that is going to build up. I'm not sure about all this oversaturation stuff yet. I don't think the metrics and the numbers are there yet to really argue that. But certainly by the end of the year, we'll be able to kind of look at the at least the release numbers to try to talk about something like that. But this is one of those situations where it's just a perfect storm of bad days for Dana. I guess this is
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. I mean, the day before he had tweeted the picture that he had got the chemical burn or whatever from the sun.
Yes, he tweeted he looked like a cherry tomato. I hope I'm not making fun of anything serious. I hope he's okay. But it was I guess he was out doing the coach's challenge.
Yeah.
For the Ultimate Fighter Fridays, which is now being branded. That's going to start in a couple weeks here, and or is it this week? I think
It
it's
starts this week.
This
Yeah.
Friday, and
Got the elimination this week.
That's right. Good call. It's so we don't know what we don't well, hopefully he's okay. I mean, this is one of those things where, and I knew something was fishy. Where I mean, he lasted about 6 minutes on the UFC 152 conference call, and as soon as they jumped on and said that he was off the call, I was like, something bad probably happened, because that's the only time he really loses these calls. So
and that's, I mean, he had done the 152 conference call, and then like immediately after that is when we learned that Aldo was off the card. No, it was Rampage. They had said Rampage was off the card in his co-main event with Glover Teixeira, and then I think like an hour and a half later he tweeted out that Aldo was off the card. He was in the main event against Frankie Edgar. So then but yesterday we're all of a sudden UFC 153 doesn't have a main or a co-main event, and I mean the whole MMA community is all in an uproar of what's going to happen, and then of course the rumors start flying and people start tweeting, and the fun starts happening.
Right. I mean, this is where, I guess as a reporter, this is when you're right. The fun does start happening. I mean, the speculations, the wheels get going. Certainly the comments between everyone that I work with now, where going back and forth and speculating fights, and lo and behold, I mean, it's a patchwork card. At this point, it's certainly a situation where everything's the exception and not the rule, but it sounds like they're piecing together a pretty, I don't want to go as far as say solid card, but certainly if you're a fan in Brazil, which as big as MMA has really exploded this past, especially the UFC this past,
Right.
16, 18 months or whatever you want to call it. I think they're gonna love this card.
Yeah, I mean, right away, that was the first thing that came to my mind, was that they'll just try to get some of the bigger names that live in that area, like the Nogueira brothers or Machida, Shogun Hua, Anderson Silva, Vanderlei Silva. I figured they'd, try to bring those in, and that's what the initial rumors were. I mean, people were bringing up Vanderlei Silva was going to be in the main event, and you could hear a rumor of it being Chael Sonnen, and then it was Anderson Silva, and so the rumors are fun because you get to actually watch people like run with rumors, and it's always fun to it's just fun to sit back and laugh, at things like that. But they did end up within the last, I think, 2 hours they've kind of added 3 fights to the card, and I mean, like you said, I mean, it is a patchwork, but considering where it's at and the names that they brought in, I don't think that it was bad. I think it's actually, the fights are good for where it's at. I think in the whole grand scheme of things, I mean, some of the fights, and we'll go through them in a minute, are a little, like, well, okay, it'll be a fun fight, but it's not like it's going to affect anything. It's not moving people up in ranks or doing anything like that. But there's times where you just got to put a fight together, and the people who we're going to talk about that stepped up. I mean, first and foremost, they should be commended for actually stepping up and not saying I'm not going to fight the people like other people have recently. First off, Frankie Edgar, who he was supposed to be fighting on the card. It's been announced that he's not going to be, find a replacement. What I guess I take it as, and I'll see what you think, is that they're just going to actually hold him off until Aldo is fine, and put that fight together some other time now.
Yeah, that seems to be I mean, certainly nothing confirmed yet on that front.
Right.
He was actually a replacement. But it was a fight that everybody was interested in seeing. It was a fight that Dana had talked about before, but then said he wasn't going to, put in the fight. I believe Eric Koch was set to fight,
Yes.
Jose Aldo. And so it'll be difficult to see what the UFC does. I mean, Coke certainly has an argument for his shot. Ricardo Lamas said he actually was, ready to sign a bout agreement for the fight. He's probably last in line. But certainly Frankie Edgar was a fight that everyone was perked up and pretty excited about. It was almost one of those situations where, the replacement might have been better than the original card, or better than the original fight. But,
Yeah.
here we are at a situation where that's not happening, and so we'll see what happens. I did hear him say, or hear his manager say, that he is planning on doing 145 fights. This wasn't a one. Well,
Okay,
he's not averted to 155. He plans on going back there someday. But as of right now, he said he's been he actually said he's been training for Aldo for quite some time. This wasn't even a new idea.
I saw that. Yeah, I mean, I would personally like to see him actually get a fight before fighting Aldo, just so, I mean, one, he can get his confidence. The guy's lost 2 in a row. Give him a top fight, and I mean, like you said, Eric Koch has got an argument for the fight. So if Aldo and him are back at the same time, put that fight together, and get someone else for Edgar. But definitely he won't be on the 153 card. Let's go down the fights that have been made. I mean, first off, we heard earlier that Big Nog is going to be fighting Dave Herman, and I would assume that that's going to be on the main card somewhere.
That is going to be the co-main event.
That is going to be the co-main event. Okay.
Yes.
Good.
That's I don't know that that's 100% official, but that's I heard what's speculated. The bout lists that I'm now going to are all saying that it's a co-main event. I would imagine that that would be, I'm willing to bet a significant amount of money. Let's put it that way. that'll be the co-main.
Well, in the main event is going to be announced. It was Anderson Silva taking on Stephan Bonner in a light heavyweight fight, which will obviously be 3 rounds because it's not a title fight. And then they also announced that Fabio Maldonado is going to be stepping in and facing Glover Teixeira. So, I mean, that one I will obviously stay on the main card because that was supposed to be, Teixeira was supposed to be in the co-main event with Rampage. So now you've got 3 fights that they've announced, and You got a whole new main event that's got pretty much the biggest star in Brazil right now in Anderson Silva.
Yeah, I mean this is a big deal in Brazil. He's a superstar. His Nike deal went global. His before it was just a regional deal. He got an award at Brazil Day in front of like I said, 1 million people. He's he's a superstar there. He's a big deal. And with as big as mixed martial arts and the UFC has gotten there, it's a big deal to have this type of guy stepping in. As far as pay-per-view buys overall, and this is like a real compelling fight.
Right.
There's the argument there that it's not, and there's an argument there it won't be. But I will say this: the metrics for Anderson Silva's fights are much better than they were, say, a year and a half ago. He's significantly selling more pay-per-views than he was. He's certainly not doing top champ numbers, but he's still reeling them in, and his numbers have been going up. I mean, the Stephan Bonnar, the American Psycho, coming in. We're talking about a durable 205er. The odds aren't out. I've seen joke odds going around saying plus 5,000, but certainly no bookie has jumped in and done an odds breakdown yet. So that'll probably be out in a day or two before that pops out. But this is this is one of those fights where this is an odd situation. This is an exception, not the rule. I mean, normally these main event fights are going to be 5 rounds now that UFC kind of, embrace the whole main events being 5-rounded. But you can't ask these guys to come in at, I can't ask Anderson to come in at 205 and fight 5 rounds or whatever. And, spare the jokes that it won't last 5 or 3 or whatever. But it's certainly going to be a 3-rounder. And I mean, I love Anderson Silva. I make no bones about it. I know I'm not supposed to say I like these fighters as much as I do, but I mean, he's just been a spectacular guy to watch, and I will enjoy it watching it. I've got to be covering it anyway, but watching Anderson Silva fight is always a treat for me. So it's it's interesting on that front as far as I'm concerned. He's the pound for pound king.
Well, I mean, and it's I mean, in light of other things that have happened in the last couple of events, with 151 being canceled, I mean, he had brought up that he would step into that fight. He did it late and it didn't happen. But I mean, he's a champion, but he's willing to step into this. It's in Brazil. He's boosting the card up, and then for Stephan Bonnar to step in and decide, hey, I'll fight Anderson Silva. I mean, Anderson Silva, you want to test yourself against, the best, but still, I mean, we're talking about Anderson Silva here, and has made people like Forrest Griffin and Irwin at 205 look just downright horrible, and Stephan Bonnar to step in. I mean, the same thing goes for Maldonado. No one wanted to fight Glover Teixeira, and right when it got announced on Twitter, he was saying he wants to fight, and seeing these guys step up and rally together and not save the card, but I mean they're putting it in a better position than it was, for sure.
No doubt. I mean, and Stephan Bonner's always been one of the guys. He's actually one of the first mixed. This is a long, long time ago, but he was one of the first cards. It was actually a regional show in Chicagoland area. He was on one of the first live cards that I ever went to, as far as like a local fight. And I mean, this guy, he'll fight a room full of chainsaws on a 2 weeks notice. That's just the type of guy Stephan Bonnar is. He'll just jump in and fight whoever. So it wasn't shocking to hear that he'd take a fight on this notice. And we've heard him taunt, hey, I'd like to fight Anderson Silva someday in the past. And when something like this pops up, you gotta, and like you said, you've got to pat these guys in the back for jumping in like this. This is a dangerous sport. This is a dangerous, Glover Teixeira he's a meat grinder to fight. Everyone's been expecting him to come into the UFC for a long time, and he's been, he's had all his, visa issues and all that stuff all over the place, and certainly he's used to fighting in Brazil. So but this is going to be a fun fight. Fabio Maldonado stepping in. It's it's certainly going to earn a lot of points from the UFC for doing such a things. All these guys will. I mean, certainly Nogueira and Dave Herman as well. I mean, Nogueira just got de-winged by Mir and coming off that injury, and for Herman to jump in and take this fight, this is good stuff to see it come together. It's a kind of a perfect storm of just craziness, but it's for a piecemeal card. To get thrown together like this with only a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks left. I mean, this is I think this is probably about as good as the UFC can do.
I agree. I mean, I'm with everyone else. First time I saw when it said Silva versus Bonner, I went, huh? But I mean,
right.
I mean, when you step back and look at it, it's an odd fight. It doesn't mean anything to anything, other than, I mean, Bonner could shock the world, and we'd all like turn the world upside down and freak out if he did something. But it's going to do well in Brazil, and considering what had happened, I mean, yesterday the whole world was coming to an end. Brazil had no main event and co-main event. Now they've got Anderson Silva and Big Nog and Teixeira still on the fight card. So it is what it is.
I mean,
I'll leave it with that cliche.
Yeah, people were tweeting Dana White yesterday, please don't cancel 153. This is what was happening 24 hours ago. And I mean,
I know.
This is this is a crazy sport, and the way they put it together. I mean, it's like I said, we'd all love to see Weidman not just have shoulder surgery last week, and Anderson come in and defend his belt at UFC 153. But certainly that's not how these things are going to work, and that wasn't possible anyway because Weidman was hurt, and what I mean. It's it's one of those things where you need a big name, you need a big guy. Anderson stuck his hand in the ring when he said that he'd jump in to fight someone at 205 to try to save 151. Of course the wheels were in motion to cancel it. It was much too late to do so. I'm sure the people who said that was just a publicity stunt are eating a little crow right now. But it's it's one of those. I mean, it's he's what more can you say about this? He's going to be he's going to come in, he's going to fight, he's going to put on a show, and he's going to be amped up to be in front of be in Rio de Janeiro on October 13th.
For sure. I mean, he'll put on a show either way, and the fans there will go crazy. I mean, every event they've had there, it has been that way, and I would expect it to be the same. I mean, first fight of the night, I expect that place to be packed and going crazy, and that's what's great about it.
Yeah, I mean, and just the way to see these guys react. I mean, when Jose Aldo defended his championship there and he jumped out of the ring. I mean, that was one of my favorite moments in the, certainly in Jose Aldo's career, and certainly in a while, to see him jumping around like that with the flag and stuff. He was pumped up, and I mean, this is going to be the type of stuff, and I mean, it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting to see it all this happen. I mean, like I said, the wheels are they've really dug in Brazil, pretty much like they did in the UK a couple years back, and it's certainly even a bigger reaction in Brazil, and to when you look at this card, I mean, I'm thinking 5, 6, 7, 11, 14, I'm going to say 16 or 17 fighters are from Brazil on the card. So it's they're going to have a great time live. There's going to be a lot of people, saying are going to be poo-pooing this card, and I guess that's their right to. But they
do that for every card now. I mean, that's just to be. I just think there's people out there that are going to do that no matter who's on the card. You can't please everybody, and Dana White knows that.
Yeah, I mean, this is Dana, I'm sure, learned that in the second UFC pay-per-view that he was a part of. I mean, this is but it's part of the reason why the sport has grown so much. The speculation, the arguments back and forth and stuff. It's certainly I think Dana would much rather have us all talking about the sport than not talking about the sport. So I'm sure that's one of the reasons why he's able to palate it so well. But yeah, that said, this is it's not a perfect situation by any means. I mean, I'm sure Bonner would 8 weeks to train for something like Anderson Silva, and I'm sure Anderson's. I've heard a rumor saying that he was in camp already after 151. I'm not so sure about that, but if he was, he'll have a little bit more time, I guess, than Stephan Bonnar. But who knows? I guess.
Yeah. Well, man, I want to thank you for stepping in on, I think, like 2 hours notice to come on and talk MMA. Why don't you tell everyone where to find you at on Twitter and whatever else you want to tell everyone.
My pleasure, man. I believe you've done this for me before in the past as well. So anytime, Josh, you know that. You can find me on Twitter. I am at Scream13, so that's Scream and the number 13. My Facebook, which I really need to beef up, is J Merrill Pettit. That's JMerrillPettit. And I've been writing for 5 Ounces of Pain as of about a month ago. Really loving it there. So you could check out my work there. And I have stuff going up on fighters.com, stuff on FightLinker, all that stuff. Everybody in the Rebellion media group has been really pushing me, so I gotta love that stuff. So I gotta give those guys a shout out. But yeah,
sweet.
That's about it.
Cool. Well, and everyone else, all the other Twitter things, you can follow the show. It's at the MMA Pulse. You can follow me on Twitter at Josh Wood MMA. Jared, even though he's not here, you can follow him at Mr. Buttons WA. And FightFans Radio, make sure you guys follow them. It is at FightFans Radio, and check out their website at fightfansradio.com. You can follow my website, MMA Valor, at MMA Valor. And you know what, man? Thanks again for being on, and I want to thank everyone for listening. And that's the wrap, man. That's the show. I'm done.
My pleasure, man. Good night.
Thanks.